Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1281B, and today's date is May 16th, 2017, and the title of the episode is Desperation, Panic Has Set In, the Takedown Has Begun. Now, before I get started, I have two announcements. The first one is that I uploaded an interview with Charles Savoy. This is on the secret society that controls precious metals. You can go to the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. Just type in X22 Report Spotlight. It will bring you right to the video. Or you can go to x22report.com. All you need to do is scroll down a little bit, look over to the right-hand side. You can play the video right on the side. Or go to newssentinel.com. Same thing. Scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, and you can play the video right on the site. Now, my second announcement is that the X22 Report is now on Steemit. I've been talking to Greg Manarino and many others. Other people have been emailing me, telling me that I should get on Steemit. So the X22 Report is now on Steemit. All you need to do is type in Steemit /@X22 Report. I'll put that link at the bottom of the video to make it easier. Now, Steemit is a different type of platform. They deal with cryptocurrency. You earn Steam, which then you can trade into dollars, and they pay people who place content on the site. They also pay those individuals who comment on the site. So for those individuals that love to comment, and I'm not talking about the comments where, hey, this is great. I'm talking about a well-written comment where people are going to like it, where people are going to pay you and say, yes, this is good. It is a great way of making extra money. Then you could take that and what you make and then maybe buy silver, gold, or Bitcoin or something like that, or just leave it as the cryptocurrency of Steam. And we can see that there are many individuals on YouTube that are very nervous. I am one of those individuals because my channel was taken down about 2.5 years ago, and it was brought up over the weekend. It was taken down for a weekend. And what we can see is that YouTube is changing their policies. They're always changing their policies on what they are doing on their site. And people are a little bit nervous about censorship. People have noticed subscribers have been unsubscribed, and these individuals want to be subscribed. And we can see that things are changing, and YouTubers are looking for a different place to place their videos and to place their content, and they're spreading out all over the web looking for different social media platforms, and Steemit is one of them. So check it out. It's Steemit, STEEMIT.com /@X22 Report. I'll put the link at the bottom of this video, and you can go right to the site and you can see other individuals on Steemit. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Well, it looks like the deep state is up to their old tricks once again, and we said this was going to happen. Actually, the chaos is going to continue. It's not going to end. Actually, it's going to get worse and worse as we move throughout this year. What is happening right now is that the deep state, the central bankers, the neocons, they are in panic mode. They realize that at any moment, the truth could come out, and they are nervous. They are afraid. This isn't about Trump. This is about them. Now, they're putting out information, a story that came out of the Washington Post, a very reliable, truthful magazine, newspaper, which we know it isn't. They just make up stuff. It's completely fake news. And they accuse Trump of improperly sharing highly confidential information with the Russian Foreign Minister Peskov during their meeting 1 week ago. Now, Trump came out and he tweeted, "As president, I wanted to share with Russia an openly scheduled White House meeting, which I have the absolute right to do, facts pertaining to terrorism and airline flight safety, humanitarian reasons, plus I want Russia to greatly step up their fight against the Islamic State and terrorism." Now, he finished it off with, "Isn't anyone concerned about the leakers who are breaking the law?" And of course, the corporate media, the deep state, they don't want to talk about that. That's just ridiculous. Now, according to the Washington Post and other media, which took the story and they just basically kept on repeating it over and over, and that's the way the corporate media does. They have it on CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, all the channels, and they just keep repeating it over and over to make it feel like that's the truth. Now, we have to go back in time and remember that the United States government central bankers, they pass laws where the corporate media is allowed to use propaganda on the American people. And the way propaganda works is they have to keep repeating it over and over until you believe it. Now, of course, there's no facts to back it up. That's why they have to keep repeating it. Now, they're saying that this was all coming from an unnamed source. Trump allegedly revealed code word information related to threats from the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria that had been provided by a U.S. ally in the region, and they're saying it's from Israel. One official told the Post that the information was so sensitive it had not been provided to U.S. allies. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, he actually defended Trump, surprisingly, and we can see that Trump, well, he is not too happy with McMaster's anyhow. But McMaster said, well, no, this isn't true at all. I was in the room, and this did not happen. It didn't happen the way they are reporting. Russia also reacted and said, we don't want to have anything to do with this ridiculous nonsense. Now, we could see that the deep state, which is made up of Democrats, Republicans, central bankers, they are calling for the impeachment of Trump. They're trying to get rid of him any way they possibly can. I also realize that they're going down the path of mental stability. They want to call him crazy. Now, of course, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to make a case. They're going to have to get Congress involved. They're going to have to get Pence to agree and the Senate to agree. And this is going to be a long, drawn-out thing. And it's not going to happen in one day. And they realize that they are running out of time right now. Now, if you're watching CNN, MSNBC, they made it seem like the president committed a crime or even a horrific act of treason by sharing the Russian secret intel, and they kept on repeating it. But when you continue to peel away at the story and you discover the facts, well, it just doesn't add up as usual. Now, of course, the Post, their headlines stated that the president revealed highly classified information, suggesting this was perhaps illegal or improper or both. But the president, he can decide to do this. He's allowed to do this as long as it doesn't hurt the country. And if he's telling Russia about terrorism, and we're both, if we listen to the official story from the deep state and the corporate media, aren't we fighting terrorism? Don't we want to stop them? But we know that the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Al-Sham, Boko Haram, all the terrorist groups, they are controlled by the CIA, Mossad, the coalition forces. They're funded, they're supported, and this is why they're getting very upset. Now, in the Post story, Trump told Lavrov the U.S. had intelligence of an ISIS terror plot. But thanks to an illegal leak made to the Washington Post, this information is now public and the Islamic State knows about it. Now let's think about this for a second. Trump was telling the Russians about what the terrorists were about to do. Now, of course, the terrorists are controlled by the neocons, they're controlled by the deep state, the central bankers. They are the force they use, which is made up of paid mercenaries from all different countries to do their bidding in all these different countries, regime change and everything else. Now, we can see that information was being passed to Russia to stop this group. Now, the deep state, they don't want them stopped. This is why they leaked the information to warn them. I mean, think about what they just did. They just blew it out into the open. So who's really responsible for the leak? I would say it's the individual who was in the government, whoever leaked it, and we'll get into that in a minute, and the Washington Post. Now, the White House is out there and they're saying this is completely fake, phony, and false. And we can see that when we look at this and we start to break it down, we can see that, well, things aren't what they seem. The Post admits that it would not be illegal for Trump to reveal classified information. So they're already admitting that it's not illegal to reveal this. The president, they're saying, is the ultimate classification authority and can declassify information if he wants to. Obama did it all the time. such when he deliberately and publicly revealed U.S. interrogation methods, giving terrorists all the information they needed to resist. The Post cites that former U.S. officials as a primary source for the story. Well, what would, and this is very important here, what would a former U.S. official know about classified information allegedly discussed between a very small group of people at the top of the U.S. and Russian governments? Think about this for a second. The real story right here is, wait a minute, who is the leaker? And how did they gain access to this information? Because it was a very small group of individuals, and we know the offices are bugged. We know the intelligence agencies listen to all of this information. We know that they have the ability to unmask. How do we know all of this? Remember the hearings with Comey when Trey Gowdy was grilling him. Comey admitted there is a certain number of individuals that can unmask American citizens. We know that they spy on American citizens even without a warrant, because what happens is they get the information from other countries because other countries have access to all of this internal data. So we can see right now that the leak must have come from within the office, from one of the intelligence agencies, and it was leaked out to the Washington Post. Now, the big question here is, why is this happening? And there's many different agendas associated with this. One, it allowed the leak out to warn the Islamic State, which is the paid mercenary group which is controlled by the intelligence agencies. This story broke as the Russian collusion story was kind of dying because they really didn't have any type of evidence whatsoever, and they needed to boost it up again. And the other reason is because there was another story that broke at the same exact time. It looks like they got word that this story was going to break, and if you ever saw the movie Wag the Dog, you can see that they needed some type of distraction from this story breaking, because this is the murder of Seth Rich, who was a computer operator in the DNC. And of course, this ties back to the Clintons, it ties back to Podesta, and it ties back to the deep state. And this is what they wanted to cover up. And if you notice, they really didn't mention anything in the corporate media about this. And I believe this was the other part of the agenda, to cover up this completely. Now, it's been close to a year since Seth Rich, which he was 27 years old. He was a computer expert who worked for the DNC, and he was murdered, shot twice in the back without anything of value taken from him. His wallet was there. There was nothing taken, but they called it a botched robbery. And Rich was found alive and in shock before he bled out. His death ruled nothing more than a botched robbery. Now, many believe Rich was a victim of the retaliation for being the source who provided WikiLeaks with a trove of DNC emails. Now, of course, during this whole email debacle with WikiLeaks and distributing all of this email from Podesta and things like that, they said it was from Russia. Now, what we're seeing today is that these rumors, well, they're no longer rumors. The emails that were given to WikiLeaks, they didn't come from Russia like we thought. They came from an insider, Seth Rich. Now, the Rich family, they hired a private investigator, Rich Wheeler. He's a former DC homicide detective who says that evidence on Seth Rich's laptop suggests he was in contact with WikiLeaks prior to his death. And Wheeler believes there's been a cover-up. He said the police department, nor the FBI, have been forthcoming, he said. They haven't been cooperating at all. I believe that the answer to solving his death lies on the computer, which I believe is either at the police department or either at the FBI. And if we really think about this, Comey knew all of this. Comey knew exactly what was going on because the FBI was looking into it. The police department was looking into it. They know exactly what happened. And we can see that the Russian hacking narrative, well, it's completely gone with this information. This is why the corporate media doesn't want to put it out there. This is why they're continually saying Russian collusion. This is why we had the story of Trump giving classified information to the Russians, which never really happened. They're doing all this to cover up what is really going on. Now, let's not forget, Julian Assange, he implied that Seth Rich was the source, and WikiLeaks offered a $130,000 reward for information leading to his murderer. So how did Seth Rich make contact with WikiLeaks? Well, it looks like he made contact with WikiLeaks through Gavin McFadden, an American investigative reporter and director of WikiLeaks who was living in London at the time. Federal law enforcement investigators, they found 44,053 emails and 17,761 attachments sent between the DNC leaders from January 2015 to May 2016 that Rich shared with WikiLeaks before he was gunned down on July 10th of 2016. On July 22nd, just 12 days after Rich was killed, WikiLeaks published the internal DNC emails that appeared to show top party officials conspiring to stop Bernie Sanders from becoming the party's presidential nominee. Now, within the FBI, there are many individuals within the FBI that are not on board with the Russian hacking narrative, and they're finally starting to come forward. Finally, we find it shocking that while the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN are all too eager to regurgitate each other's anonymously sourced stories that are critical of Trump, none of them had a single reference to this story at all, which is completely amazing. Now, what's happening is the deep state, they are panicking right now. They are in desperation mode. Think about what is happening right now. Truth is coming out. More and more evidence is coming out. Trump is like a bull in a china shop. He cannot be stopped. The economy is coming down. The Islamic State is losing in Syria. The North Korea war not going anywhere. And we can see they are becoming very desperate. Now, I know they're calling for impeachment, but I think at this point, that will take way too long, and more information is going to be coming out. More and more truths are going to be coming out, and there's not enough time for this to happen. So their next move might be some type of assassination attempt on Trump's life. I think at this point, they don't care. Now, going forward, the chaos is going to get even worse. They're going to try everything and anything, but the propaganda, it's not going to work, because all you have to do is use facts. All you have to do is ask them for the proof. That's where the propaganda stops. And if you notice, it always stops right there. Now, the deep state, they're not going to back off. They're not going to say, hey, let's not start the wars. Let's not start this. No, they're going to move forward with everything. And remember, there are individuals within the Pentagon, individuals within the FBI, individuals within the CIA, individuals within Trump's cabinet, where they're working for the deep state. I would say almost all the intelligence agency personnel are working for the deep state. Maybe there's a couple that are not, that are on the side where they're trying to help Trump, but most of them, they are working for the deep state. And they're pushing the wars around the world right now because they need this to get started. And they're going to continually deploy military assets, military soldiers, all around the world. We see that there is about 4,000 NATO troops with tanks, armored vehicles, air support, and high-tech intelligence centers deployed to Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. The U.S. Army is reopening or creating 5 equipment storage sites in the Netherlands, Poland, Belgium, and 2 locations in Germany. And they're continually doing this because of the Russian aggression problem, which really there is no Russian aggression. But they're just continually doing this because they're hoping for this war. Now, Turkish intel is warning Russia that the Islamic State might be attacking Russian Navy ships as it crosses the Bosphorus. And this is the area where the ships will flow through this little stretch of land to get to the other side. So it's the Black Sea, which connects to the Aegean Sea. And they use this to bring ships between the two. And Turkey does control this area. And they're warning Russia right now that this might happen. Now, we know that the United States government, central bankers, the deep state, they've been supporting terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, Al-Sham, Al-Nusra, Boko Haram, the Islamic State. And they tried to rename some of these terrorist groups in the past where they wouldn't show up on the terrorist list. But something very interestingly happened. Canada, the U.S., they failed to put the Al-Qaeda affiliate on a terrorist list. And there's a professor, Mark Abrams, who works on terrorism. He came up with a new definition of terrorism. And the definition reads as follows: non-state actors who use violence against civilians for a political goal and haven't been supported by the U.S. Which means if they haven't been supported by the U.S., then the CIA can then give them weapons. And they're trying to play word games so they can supply the terrorist groups with weapons. This is what the intelligence agencies want to do. Now, we see that the deep state is out there and they're trying to create this idea that Assad has a crematorium, which is attached to a prison, and he is burning people in this crematorium. And they have a picture of the building, a satellite image, and of course it's black and white, and they're saying the snow melted on top. This is how they know something's going on, and this is the proof that they have. Of course, they're showing pictures of bodies and things like that, but they've never made the link to Assad actually doing this. Now, when you look at crematoriums, they usually have very tall smokestacks, and this is to allow the burning body, the odor, the smoke, and everything to reach a higher level so it doesn't smell as bad and it gets into the atmosphere and it moves off and it disperses. But we're not seeing this in this building. The other thing is, if snow is melting on top of the roof, well, and it is a prison, well, isn't there a kitchen? Don't they make food? Isn't there a heating system? I mean, there could be so many different reasons why snow is melting. It doesn't have to be because there's a crematorium, and first of all, there's no smokestack. So when I look at this, it looks like, well, it most likely is the heating system or maybe the kitchen area where they're making food. And right now, the UN right now says it cannot verify claims about that there's any type of crematorium in Syria, in this area, even in this building. Now, Trump, he is out there and he said something very, very interesting, that the United States remains open to working together with Russia and Iran to find a solution that leads to a stable and united Syria. Now, this is very interesting because he's going to work with both countries, Iran and Russia and Syria, and come up with some type of deal. Again, no absolutes, no red lines, or anything like that. Now, we are seeing information out there, and this is coming out of the New York Times, where they are saying that this ransomware, it might be, there's a good possibility, and if you notice, there's nothing that actually concrete about it, that this ransomware is from North Korea. Now, this is a huge stretch. Remember when they said that North Korea hacked into several firewalls at Sony, exposing gigabytes of confidential data, only later to be eventually revealed that it was a disgruntled employee inside of Sony? That whole story was completely fake. So the question is, why would North Korea use a ransomware that the NSA developed, use it to hit all of these countries? Except the U.S., because the U.S. is the country that's threatening North Korea, right? And remember, a 22-year-old, he was looking at the code, and he spotted a domain name in there, and he noticed that the code was calling out to this certain domain name, and it kept on doing it, so he decided to purchase the domain name, and once he did that, the ransomware was stopped dead in the track. It was a kill switch. Now, the U.S., the intelligence agencies, they were looking at the code, and other different outfits, security teams were looking at the code, and they never noticed that this piece of code was calling out to a domain name. They just overlooked it because the 22-year-old was saying it kept on calling. And if you were looking at the code, Most likely they were monitoring if the code was trying to call out to different IP addresses, and if you were scanning it with some type of scanning system to detect where it was calling out, you would notice this, which tells me that the US wasn't really looking at the code. It tells me that they were part of it because they were saying they're looking at the code and it's from North Korea, but how could they possibly miss this when one kid living with his parents can pick this up? So right there and then, they just blew it. And again, why would North Korea use it on all the other countries except for the United States? Why would the United States not be affected by this whatsoever? I mean, it really wasn't affected at all. It makes no sense. And just from that, it tells us once again that they are lying to the American people. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.